You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Ken Bruce leaving Radio 2.
Has there ever been such a fuss about a DJ leaving any arm of the BBC ever?
I know, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Nothing became his, what's that quote about? Nothing became his career like the leaving of it, or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's like leaving Radio 2 made him twice as famous as he was by staying at Radio 2. It's absolutely extraordinary. I suppose it's just the media's, or just people's general appetite for sharing their feelings about things like this nowadays, that they become bigger stories than ever.
Yeah, but didn't you think it was a kind of win-win for him? Because, what happened was Ken Bruce was offered a job, wasn't he, by Greatest Hits Radio, presumably for more money. Radio 2 probably thought, great, because it's in their interest to move the old guard, like Steve Wright, etc., and replace them with younger people for the sake of the image of the station. And also, he would have been hard to afford. But anyway, they probably thought, okay, but they've got two options. One is to say, okay, we'll clear your desk out and go now, which looks fantastically, grotesquely disrespectful for someone who's been there since whatever it is, 1986. I mean, he was doing Radio 2 when I was at Smash Hits. It's astonishing, really. Or they say, which they did say, stay on for another month and, we'll have a big fanfare about it all. And then they realised, of course, within that, straight away, that he was using that month just to advertise his new show, wasn't he?
To be fair, I don't listen to him regularly, so I wouldn't know. So I don't think it was necessarily the case that he was consciously advertising his new show. But the fact is, the fuss around him was advertising the new show.
That was making
that
it
wouldn't
very
necessarily be anything he did.
No. But then they turned around and said, okay, well, instead of a month, you're going to have to leave this Friday. And so therefore he could justifiably put out a slightly wounded tone, couldn't he?
Wounded is the right word.
Yeah. And,
how sad that I didn't get the carriage clock and the speech from the managing director or whatever. I had a nice bit of cake lined up for Friday.
Yeah, and they whisked it away from under my nose. I know.
It is. I suppose it's win-win for Radio 2 and for Greatest Hits. Although I couldn't help thinking that also at the same time that, thinking about the parlous future of music radio, what appears to be the parlous future of music radio, it's a little bit like two bald men fighting over a comb, as the famous expression goes. Like, what's the future in this? But I'm sure the future is long enough to see Ken Bruce out and all these people. But, in, 25, 30 years' time, what's going to be happening with music radio? Have you seen any sign of your offspring listening to music radio?
No, absolutely none at all, not remotely. And
I don't think they know how to do it.
It's the music that you might be interested in hearing, curated by somebody you might be interested in, but they're not interested in any of this. It also struck me that the whole Greatest Hits format surely has a very limited time span in itself, because Greatest Hits depends on the notion that everybody at a particular time hits. It depends on hits. And it depends on people listening to those records on the radio and watching those records on things like Top of the Pops at the same time, and it being the soundtrack to their lives. So the noughties, will 50-year-olds in whatever it would be, about 15 years' time, will they be listening to a nostalgia program that's got Hot Chip, Scissor Sisters, Daft Punk, Klaxons, Lady Gaga? I really don't know, because those things just began to evaporate, didn't they? People were not listening to all those things at the same time. So surely Greatest Hits as a concept is itself on the way out.
It's true, because the media no longer provides a kind of frame for this stuff, does it?
Yeah.
You won't be able to go back. It often strikes me, I do a lot of research for books, and so, so yesterday I was in the library actually, and I was looking at the copy of the Sunday Times for the day after the funeral of the Princess of Wales. And there's nothing takes you back to a place and a time like reading an old newspaper or an old magazine, because you don't just read the content, you read the context at the same time. So you read the adverts and you read the juxtapositions between the main story and the story that everybody's forgotten and all that. So it kind of whisks you back. Well, that's going away completely. You know, just steadily. It's disappearing. That whole notion of kind of frames, you know, let's travel back to what were we playing on the breakfast show in, 1999. It'll be sort of impossible to do that, really, in the future. So, but I'm sure, Grace Stitz will continue to do well, because certainly at the moment, if Radio 2 management are going in there and saying, all right, here's your younger DJs, and we're not going to play, I don't know what anymore, certainly not going to play the tremolos anymore or whatever, right. But we're probably not going to play anything from the 80s anymore. And it's going to be, as you say, Hot Chip and the Klaxons and so forth. And those are your vegetables, and they're good for you. I think for a period of time, a lot of people are going to bridle against that, and they will be the ones attracted to things like Greatest Hits Radio. But I sort of feel sympathy for the BBC, although they do always end up with egg on the face over these issues. But they have to kind of move this stuff on, don't they?
Well, they do. No, I tell you.
Otherwise, people will stay forever, because they never used to. Although, to be fair, Jimmy Young stayed forever. Yeah, do you remember? Stayed forever. Was there a similar fuss when Jimmy Young finally, knocked on the head? I don't think there was.
No, but Jimmy Young didn't have a daytime show, did he? So I think
he did. Well, he did for years. I don't even possibly.
Not at the end, I don't think. Okay, whereas Ken Bruce is kind of there. He is at 10 o'clock till 1 or whatever it is, But it's astonishing, but very difficult for them to know how to spin that. And on that note, in light of difficult publicity manoeuvres for the BBC, I noticed that they've very quietly renamed the John Peel wing of Broadcasting House. It's now called Zone H.
That's got a ring to it, hasn't it?
It's really inviting.
Yes. Whoopee, let's go to Zone H.
And they've rebranded the John Peel stage Woodside, haven't they?
That's Glastonbury. That's not the BBC.
That's Glastonbury.
They've both done it simultaneously.
Simultaneously, yeah. And that's because of his, various associations, which, of course, he freely admitted, with underage girls. And it just, what a difficult thing. And it just struck me that I can remember interviewing him in, I think it must have been like 2002 for Word magazine. It was for our first edition of Word. And he was very, very keen to talk about all this stuff. I remember he married a 15-year-old girl in America.
Yeah.
And he talked about all his, copping off with girls. And to make clear that he now thought this was really, really sordid, and he was really, really ashamed of it. And he was warming up, I think, to write an autobiography, which he never did in the end because he started it when he died. But what made me think, there's always family, that his wife and his kids, that must be unbelievably difficult, don't you think? Because John Peel, in 2012, when they named that thing, the part of the BBC, the John Peel wing, John Peel was a kind of national treasure.
It was a
saint. John Peel, Saint John, exactly. He had absolutely uncritical admiration. And to be one of his children, his wife, and walk around and, oh gosh, John Peel was your father, that must have been the most extraordinary thing. And for that to go from being a national treasure to being this really slightly awkward and very awkward and difficult legacy, that must be hard to deal with, don't you think?
It's very hard. I think two things I thought about this is, one, it once again indicates the fact that in this day and age, in this DNA, the one thing is that public policies will be called into question, often by quite a small number of people, and will turn into some kind of social media storm. And one thing you can guarantee is that the body behind it will, in the face of this small blowback on social media, fold up and instantly give in. And nobody does this more than the BBC.
Yeah.
So if you had the balls to call it the Peel wing, keep calling it the Peel wing. When is one of these organisations going to stand up and go, yeah, so you and whose army? You know what I mean? We decided to do this.
But they haven't got the nerve for fear.
They have not got the nerve.
That it indicates that they might somehow endorse or approve. I don't know. On the other hand,
and the other thing I've got to say is, why they're so keen on naming things after people anyway. You know, I even thought this when they changed the name of Western House, which the headquarters of Radio 2, to Wogan House in the light of the death of Terry Wogan. And there's no scandal attached to Wogan or anything like it, you know. But I did think that's a bit on a kind of odd thing to do. You know what I mean? It's not that the BBC hasn't traditionally gone in for that kind of thing. Loads of people have, you know, given distinguished service to the BBC, and they haven't necessarily had buildings named after them or wings. And if you're going to do those things, you know, just stand behind them. Or on the other hand, don't do them. Yeah, just don't do them. And I tell you the other thing, move it away from broadcasters. I was thinking about this morning. You and I are old enough to have seen the reputations of major figures in popular music and popular culture wax and wane and change over the years. The people are the same. The things they've done are the same. But, you know, they just, the public view of these things, of these people, changes absolutely all the time. And you kind of have to accept that with popular entertainment. And so, particularly with music, I don't think they should go around naming things after musicians because, like, I don't think they should have loads of honours because I think the honour is our memory of them and how we feel about them. You know, is what we carry inside us. It's not what, you know, is recorded on a statue or the name of a building or anything of that nature. It's what you think about them. And particularly with music people and broadcast people, you know, the memories of John Peel or Terry Wogan or whatever are in you, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
They're not something you're going to learn about.
Yeah.
You know, somebody in 30 years' time is not going to look at the Peel wing or Wogan House.
No, and for most of us,
what was that all about? You know, that'll have gone by then, probably, you know, because it's in the memory of people who lived through it. And they don't need any further memorial. You know, we know what we think about those people. And we have a kind of rounded view of them, don't we?
We do. And that relationship with John Peel for most of us was formed by just listening to his late night radio show. And you know, and it's just sad that what he achieved with that and the records he played and what an extraordinary broadcaster he was, that's been affected
sullied. Yeah, no, really absolutely. Is. Yeah. But it's sullied really by people who don't really remember him. Whereas people who do remember him, he was never a saint, you know. No,
never. No,
nor the opposite.
No, not remotely a saint. No, and he was the first person to admit that. Absolutely. And he was a really, really complicated guy. I remember in that interview him telling me two things. One was about his parents. One was that his mum openly preferred his younger brother, Alan. That was her favourite and used to say so repeatedly. And on her deathbed, he tried to give her a little hug. And she refused to embrace him. Can you imagine? And his memory, I know, this is what he told me, and his memory of his father, his first memory of his father was he must have been about, I suppose, 5 years old, was down the bottom of, I think it was probably a drive, quite well off actually, at the house outside of Liverpool. And he was at the end of the road and he saw a motorbike approaching. And there was a soldier in uniform. And the motorbike slowed down and turned left and came into the house. And he ran ahead of the motorbike, shouting to his mum that a strange man was outside. Of course, that was his father. So he came from a very, very complicated emotional setup. Actually.
And I've told you my John Peel story many times, which was I was in Tokyo with him.
Yeah.
On a kind of BBC week or whatever. And there must have been about 10 or 15 of us. And on the last night, we all went to a disco.
Yeah.
And there we were thousands of miles away from home. Everybody on the dance floor, production staff, me, John Peel's wife or whatever. Who was the only person who couldn't be persuaded to come on the dance floor? John Peel.
So self-conscious.
He was so inhibited.
Yeah, he was.
Unbelievably. And listen, I've got no room to talk. But, you know,
at least you were on that dance floor throwing some shapes. Yeah.
That is remarkable.
Incredible.
So John Peel, complicated person.
And the complications of these press stories. There's a story about Glastonbury a couple of days. They announced the lineup for Glastonbury. I'm sure you saw that, but they've been getting a lot of stick for the fact that at this year's event, 53% of the 55 confirmed acts are male, and only 43% are non-white artists or groups that include non-white members.
Oh,
so there are 53% of the 55 acts confirmed are male. I mean, this is absolutely great. Actually, I think this is really good publicity for Glastonbury, because Glastonbury has always been incredibly inclusive and made a real effort to try and make sure everybody's, every base is covered, But dating that, you can't win, can you? You cannot win.
I see Guns N' Roses are headlining, aren't they? And judging by the last picture I saw of him, I think 53% of the talent is represented by Axl Rose.
Axl Rose, I know. The man's pound on the pounds. There's no doubt about it. He's losing the inch war. He's watching his waist. It's lucky because it's out there where he can see it. That's right.
The Word Podcast. Prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
So we were talking the other day about U2 opening this splendid new Las Vegas venue called the Sphere. Is that what it's called?
That's right, the Sphere, yeah.
Sphere. And they've announced, they confirmed that they are doing it, and they're going to do Achtung Baby, because it's, 30 years? Is that right?
Yeah, it would have come out in 93 years. That's right.
That's 30 years. But the odd thing is that they will not be joined by Larry Mullen Jr., because he's got a back problem or something. He's
had back surgery. That's right. He's not going to be fit enough to play.
It's a weird one. That is a weird one. That's like Jimmie Nicol joining the Beatles on stilts. That is, you know what I mean? For younger listeners, when was this, Mark? When Jimmie Nicol did it? 64?
65, was it?
Maybe 65.
Maybe 64 or 65, yeah.
So the Beatles were due to tour Amsterdam. Okay. Well,
I think it was Australia, because it was when Ringo had tonsils out, wasn't it?
Okay, so Ringo he was in hospital, so he couldn't do the gigs. So they got in a guy called Jimmie Nicol, whose life was utterly changed.
It was for the worse, actually.
Absolutely.
Oh,
for the
God.
worse.
I mean, years later, he would turn up at Beatles conventions hoping that people might buy his signature. I mean, it's not good, really.
No, a very good chapter in Craig Browne's book about
fantastic chapter
all about Jimmie Nicol. Anyway, he was only there for 2 weeks or something like that. But this guy, Bram, what's he called? Bram van Berg is going to be there for the whole run. It's an odd old business, isn't it? Because wasn't it Bono who said, and if it wasn't, it really should have been, because it's a terribly good line. He said that, 50% of the value when people come to see you is when you go on stage and they just go, oh, they're all there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's one part of your life that doesn't need repairing.
Yeah.
Is this bit that you formed an association with when you were 15 or 16 years old, and it's still going on 40 years later. And
in their case, I mean, it's a long time.
It's a long time.
This is a group that I think it's fantastic. It's a wonderful story, actually. This is a group that nearly all of them at school together. They've been in that group, 45 years?
There's no other case. There's no other case.
No, ZZ Top was probably the longest lineup, but obviously that's not happened anymore. But but ZZ Top didn't play anything like the same number of gigs.
No.
But I think it's interesting because they've got two options, haven't they? One is that they play, which they've decided to do. They honour this contract because the reputational damage of breaking the contract and backing out now would be, they think, very bad, very harmful, and they don't want to let these people down. And also, there's a lot of money involved. And
there's a lot of money.
Huge amount of money. Very lucrative few gigs. We were talking about the other day. We thought there was somewhere in the region of $80 or $90 million.
Well,
whatever.
We might be exaggerating, but it's a lot of money. Yeah, and they haven't toured since 2019.
Yeah. But the other option is that they don't do it because what they are is not authentically U2. And U2, no other group could stand for, with the possible exception of Bruce Springsteen, that idea of authenticity, and it's genuine, isn't it? It's moral fiber. And, so the option is that a lot of people really can't believe the fact that it's not U2. It's not them themselves, you know. But surely the option is, if that's the case, and you don't think that constitutes a real U2, then don't go. I mean, it's up to you.
True.
I mean, just simply don't buy a ticket. Don't sit there and complain about it. I mean, if you want to see U2, wait a year and then U2 will be back again. But just don't endorse this and don't give any of your money towards this particular project, I would have thought.
This is a junction in the word podcast. It separates that bit from this next bit.
So 2 of my personal favourite musicians sadly died this week. Wayne Shorter, at the age of 89.
I know.
And David Lindley, at the age of 75.
David Lindley, who was on Whistle Test once with us. Do you remember?
Oh, with his band, was he?
We came on. No, I think he came on to demonstrate some kind of equipment. It was some extraordinary thing. And I'm pretty sure you interviewed him. My memory's a bit vague, 1984-ish.
Oh, really? God, I don't remember.
Don't remember. I think maybe you were. Maybe I interviewed him.
Maybe. If anybody, excuse me, if anybody knows who Mark Allen or I were talking to in 1984, please get in touch and help us, because we don't remember. And this does frequently happen with Whistle Test. People send you an email saying, I was watching you talking to so-and-so. And I go, no memory.
Never met them in
my life. And then they send me a link and I thought, sure enough, who is that bloke talking to? David Lindley, whoever. It's me. Anyway, Wayne Shorter, so 89, member of Art Blakey's group, and then the kind of second Miles Davis quintet right through the Bitches Brew. So saw a lot of change. He remembered when it was all fields round there. He saw a huge amount of change, and then started Weather Report with Joe Zawinul. And I was thinking about Weather Report. I love Weather Report. Probably not very fashionable. I love Weather Report. It's
a beautiful noise.
I've got all the records. It's a beautiful noise. I saw them a couple of times, and I was thinking about them today and thinking how significant was the fact that they were called Weather Report, not the Joe Zawinul, Wayne Shorter band, or which would have been the kind of standard jazz way of doing it, wasn't it? It was deciding to call themselves Weather Report that made them a kind of jazz rock group, didn't it? Rather than a jazz group. It's that whole idea of a kind of abstract name rather than something that's based on the names of the musicians, which kind of carried through into the way that they performed, really, that it wasn't so much so-and-so does a solo and then so-and-so does a solo, although there was a certain amount of that going on. It was to do with the kind of the joint noise. And you couldn't get away from the fact Joe Zawinul was clearly the kind of busier member of the leadership. Joe Zawinul composed loads of things. And so I've got all these Weather Report albums, and they're all the same. They all begin with 3 Joe Zawinul tunes. And then halfway through second side, Wayne Shorter pops up with one, And within the credits, they always go, Joe Zawinul, piano, electric piano, Oberheim, Moog synthesizer, an endless list of technical pieces of equipment that Joe had decided to exercise himself on. And then you go down the list and it goes, Wayne Shorter, saxophone. That's it. That's all I do. Yeah. And
I've specialized in it. I'm very, very, very good.
But he's just his tone. Tone is so important with a soloist, isn't it? It's more important than anything at all. And I was thinking about this. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember when your children were born. If your experience was the same as ours, but they used to put all the babies in a little room off the ward.
Yeah.
And they'd say, if your baby cries, you have to go and get it and feed it, whatever. And the new mothers would invariably say, how will I know if it's my baby? And then after a few days, they knew it was their baby. They could tell. Well, I felt like that about Wayne Shorter's saxophone.
Brilliant.
As soon as I hear it in anything, Steely Dan's Asia.
So I was listening to that just the other day. It's fantastic.
Joni Mitchell's Paprika Plains, these things. He would just appear as if through a fog.
Yeah.
And you go, my God, that's Wayne Shorter.
There was a lovely review in the Guardian by Richard Williams. Did you read the obit by Richard Williams?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I just scribbled down what he said. He said, Shorter's saxophone could materialize like a wraith of pale smoke through a door left ajar, curling gracefully around the musical furniture before evaporating as mysteriously as it had appeared.
That is absolutely
indelible
perfect.
after image. Isn't that wonderful?
That's absolutely true.
It is, because if you listen to, particularly, I think Asia's a really good example. It comes with that soaring saxophone.
It's near the end, isn't it?
Right at the very end. It's fantastic. And I was listening to Paprika Plains, and that's amazing too, because it's him and Jaco Pastorius kind of interweaving, and he can be really soft and then he can be really stinging, and it's extraordinary change of sound. Oh, it was just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Fantastic.
And the Mingus album too. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And David Lindley, it's interesting because you can't, there we are talking about Wayne Shorter's sax solos. I can't think of any particular solos that David Lindley played, because David Lindley was, he's one of those session players who wasn't the key instrument. So he wasn't the keyboard, he wasn't the bass, wasn't the drums, wasn't the guitar, whatever. He was embroidery, really, wasn't he? He played every imaginable stringed instrument. Absolutely. The banjo, lap steel, mandolin.
And he could play them at the age of about 5, apparently.
Yeah, incredible.
He was a child prodigy on absolutely anything like that.
So he was just brought in to add a texture and a tone and to make things sound kind of rootsy. And it's interesting, all the people he worked with, I was looking at, obviously about the stuff that he was in, the member of the section, was he? The Mellow Mafia, who played a lot of the arrangements and stuff for, Jackson Browne and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young and Ry Cooder. But also he was on records by people like Tanita Tikaram and the Bangles and Howard Jones and Belinda Carlisle. So he was brought in to add that particular note of kind of rootsiness, wasn't he?
The first time I was aware of him, probably, is, well, I don't know if it's the first time I was aware of him, but it's this first time he came to Britain in 1971, because he'd been a member of Kaleidoscope. He didn't meet, and I don't think the records even came out over here. But he ended up in Britain in 1971. And when Terry Reid plays at the Glastonbury in 1971, that famous footage, which is captured
is he in
as
that
part
lineup?
Of course he is. He is the lap steel player.
Yes, of course.
That's the coolest looking band you've ever seen in your life. Terry Reid and Alan White on drums. And I can't remember the name of the bass player. And then sitting down, playing what he called lap steel, was David Lindley in that great Terry Reid band that made River, the record that they made, and then didn't come out for about 2 years, so missed its moment. But that was absolutely extraordinary. And then he appeared, most memorably for me, indelibly actually for me, on the second and the third and I think the fourth Jackson Browne albums.
Yeah.
So For Every Man and what's the one afterwards? Oh God, I can't remember what it's called. Everybody out there listening to it going, it's called so-and-so. I can't think. Anyway, the second and the third Jackson Browne albums, where he completely wraps himself around Jackson Browne's vocals all the way through those records. And I yield to no one in my admiration for Jackson Browne. I love Jackson Browne, but Jackson Browne would never have been anything without David Lindley. It's David Lindley who just provides the kind of emotional quickening in those records. It's David Lindley that makes those records stirring in a way that most singer-songwriters are not, really. It's extraordinary, the drama in those records. And so much of that came from David Lindley. And if you ever saw them play, which I did, I think on more than one occasion, there they were, two guys, same age, probably quite similar backgrounds, whatever. And Jackson Browne would appear on stage, and Jackson Browne was the kind of person, if he just emerged from an air crash, he would come out looking like Cary Grant. He just had that. He just always looked perfect.
He did. His hair perfectly in place. Yeah.
David Lindley, on the other hand, could have come out from 3 days with an army of stylists, and he would still look like an unmade bed. Yeah. The two of them.
So true. There's a whistle test clip of the two of them together. Just the two of them, Lindley playing the violin, Jackson Browne, I think, playing the piano. And the difference between them is absolutely extraordinary.
Jackson couldn't help looking like that, and David Lindley couldn't help looking like that. And when he made his solo album, I was looking at his first solo album. If you've got a copy of his first solo album, go and have a look at it. Because there he is. He's wearing a kind of blanket, a kind of poncho, with this goofy look on his face, this kind of mad hair, as if he's looking at the photographer saying, "Go on, do your best.
I dare you. Yeah.
Do your best.
Can you put a filter on this?" Yeah,
absolutely. But he popped up on all kinds of things, but nothing more memorably than those records with Jackson Browne. And of course, he got back together with Jackson Browne, didn't he? And about 10 years ago, they made a record in a live album called Love Is Strange. I think they made it in Barcelona, certainly in front of a Spanish-speaking audience. And they played it very much acoustically for its kind of Spanish feeling,
Yeah.
And I just thought he was wonderful, David Lindley. Absolutely wonderful. And if you've never heard the second two Jackson Browne albums, go and correct that immediately.
And also just go and look at the sheer quantity of recordings that he did. It is absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? Hundreds of records and a huge variety of people. It's amazing.
The Word Podcast, 2 cocoa tins and a piece of string.
So a very interesting story about De La Soul has just appeared. And De La Soul, two of them, very sadly, Trugoy couldn't play the Grammys because he was too ill and has subsequently, in fact, died. But the other two played the Grammys and did a kind of version of Buddy from 3 Feet High and Rising. And their material, all their songs have now finally, after all this time, and those records first came out, I think, about 1989, been cleared for digital streaming, haven't they? And I think that's a really interesting story because, I think there was a court case in 1991, that is a long time ago, when the Turtles sued them for sampling, I think, a 12-second slowed down fragment of a Turtles song, and sued them, and obviously won this case for a large amount of money, at which point it became obvious that they were going to have to clear all the samples in the songs. And these samples, there are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them.
200 they had to clear.
200 samples. And there's one, I think, on Cool Breeze on the Rocks, which has more than 20 fragments in less than a minute of different tracks by Public Enemy and Jefferson Starship, Africa Bambaataa. And so they had to employ a specialist to go through all this. And it's been an entire year's work to get all these samples identified and then get clearance from all this. So firstly, can you imagine how much that must have cost? Secondly, can you imagine how much revenue they must think is likely to derive from this stuff being available to be able to justify that cost? And thirdly, are they kind of guinea pigs in all this? And I mean, why aren't other bands having the same kind of problem?
Well, maybe they are behind the scenes. I mean, I think, people got a lot wiser about this stuff, didn't they? I think there was a feeling in the early days, put it on there. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll pay people if they come along. But subsequently it became so much a part of a business. People realized they had to have somebody in there pre-clearing material.
Yeah.
And I suppose when you look at the cost, I suppose it's a one-off cost for a lifetime of use, isn't it? Because now you're looking at what De La Soul or anybody might earn in streaming.
Yeah.
You're thinking about a period of 10, 20, 30 years, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because the market grows all the time. And it was interesting. I was reading an interview with a woman who, she has a company she is the queen of clearances. And she has a company just dedicated to doing this, and about how you can reach an accommodation with anybody, provided they're being realistic. But if you pick up the phone and saying, I'm looking to clear something for, I don't know, anybody really big, people are seeing dollar signs.
Huge dollar signs.
And therefore you can't have a sensible conversation with them at all. But it's very interesting. And what's interesting is also a few years ago, De La Soul gave this material away, didn't they? On the internet. You could download it for a short period of time. And then their record company or somebody said, you have no right to do that.
Absolutely.
But by then they're already...
But it's too late. It's already
they'd
out.
already given it away. But people have probably forgotten what they did with it,
But it must have really affected their legacy, really, because they're not talked about that much, are they, De La Soul? And you think, though, just how significant those records were. 3 Feet High and Rising, when it came out, was a major, major statement, wasn't it?
Can I just say, I have one big problem with De La Soul, and I love them when they're lovable, but I'm sorry, the skits, I can't deal with the skits. I read about this last week that they're coming out streaming, so I get out my CDs. De La Soul is dead or whatever, and I just immediately think, for God's sake, there's a leaden joke at the beginning of this before you even get to any music.
Yeah.
There is never any good reason for that, is there?
No. And how quickly the fun evaporates from something like that. Heard once, it's painful, but heard more than once. Oh my God.
Well, that's certainly true for me. I don't know how would our sons feel about this, Mark? Because they're more of the De La Soul generation, aren't they? Do they probably quite happily rerun the skit in their head? Do they? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's like you and me rerunning. We can quite happily listen to Gorilla by the Bonzo Dog Band endlessly, and listen to
the whole of the intro and the outro.
But even the kind of the things that are in between the tracks, what's that track called? Where Viv it only becomes apparent after a while that he's at a urinal.
Oh God, yes.
And he says, I see you have the same trouble with your trousers
as I do.
Still makes me laugh. All those years later.
There's a wonderful one. Is it on Gorilla's shirt, the track Shirt, where he goes out with a microphone and a long lead. He goes out onto the road outside the studio, just interviews people about the kind of shirts they're wearing. Do you remember that one? It's brilliant. This bloke goes, I'm all for the short shirt. He says, well, you're very stylish, certainly. It's absolutely
you see that we're laughing about.
No, you're right. We're doing the same thing.
We're laughing about that. I bet your boy and my boy would similarly laugh about De La Soul, even years later.
They're right.
Anyway, what else have we been doing this week? We talked to Michael Cragg, who's written a book. What's his book called? I haven't got it in front of me.
It's called Reach for the Stars.
Reach for the Stars, and it's about the era of pop music that I suppose, began with the Spice Girls, yes?
Yeah.
And it kind of ends with the advent of the TV talent shows, doesn't it? So it's 1996 to 2006.
And he's got really good theories, really good theories about why television kind of kills pop music. And also really, really good theories about why the Spice Girls were successful, I thought. He had lots of reasons for that. One of which was that they sang about friendship, which I thought was really clever. They didn't sing about relationships, they sang about friendship.
No.
And so girls, 14-year-old girls would think, well, that's it. I'm in a little gang. It's all about being in with the gang. And I'm more interested in that at the moment than I'm being besotted with some bloke. So that was really interesting. Also,
friendship groups also, regardless, leave aside the blokes thing, the boyfriends things. You've got sisters and I've daughters and so forth.
Yeah.
And friendship groups with girls are far more important than they are with boys. Far more powerful.
enormously important.
And so
they were always in a group. Before my sister were always in a group of 4 girls. And A, B, and C then fell out with D.
Yes.
And then D was back in, and C was out.
Absolutely.
And then C was out, and then B was suddenly very unpopular. And you think, what's happening? And then suddenly my sister would be out, and she'd be miserable.
Absolutely.
This, I can't keep track of this.
It's not funny when you're going through it at all, even if you're going through it just as a parent or a brother or whatever.
No. It's so hard.
But the Spice Girls were probably the first people to sing about that. And it's such a powerful thing in the lives of...
I think that's probably true, because you think the Supremes and all that, they were girl gangs, but they mostly sung about boys.
Boys, absolutely. Yeah. So, it's...
Also, there's an amazing story in there, which we won't give away, but it's about Donatella Versace asking for a group to go to, sending a private plane if it to pick them up.
Getting it wrong, getting the name wrong by one letter.
Getting the wrong group by one letter.
We'll leave you. And if you can't work out who that is, you really should listen to the chat, because it's very good. We also talked to Lucy O'Brien about her book about
Karen
Carpenter called Lead Sister.
That's good.
The Karen Carpenter story is...
the Karen Carpenter's parents, who pretty much invented the concept of helicopter parenting. Yes. Oh, my Lord, there's some stories in that. It's extraordinary. And also a lot of really good stuff about what a singer needs to survive. It's really worth listening to.
Very definitely. Very definitely.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.